facilitating diversity workshops since 1987 and truly believes in the oneness of humankind. He also believes that unconscious, exclusive behavior hurts everyone. And it is not just the occasional riot or hate crime that impacts us the most. He believes it is the daily dose of tension, suspicion, and distrust that eats away at our human potential. He also believes that frank and honest consultation among diverse groups of Americans will set a powerful example that it will encourage peace and cooperation around the world. Dennis' most recent diversity post was serving as the National Diversity Specialty Consultant for the YMCA of the USA. While serving in this capacity, his responsibilities included connecting with members of the Diversity Champion Network, enhancing the association's ability to accomplish the wise mission of inclusion, leading workshops, giving presentations to help others gain confidence regarding the diversity initiative and cultural competence. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot of things tonight, so I welcome Mr. Davis.
I'm wired. Accustomed to being wired. Not. All right. Well, I want to first say thank you to the Venice Interfaith Community Association. And then I want to say thank you to Emmanuel Lutheran Church. And I want to say thank you to all of you for taking time out of your schedules to be here tonight. So, this is probably going to be a bit non-traditional because I'm not a fan of lecturing to people. I think we need to have some kind of interchange. So if it's okay with y'all, I won't be so proper. Notice I said y'all. And I want to have more of an interchange than me just disseminating information to you, because there's not a lot that's going to be retained as is. I want to thank my beautiful wife for being here, and my beautiful daughter, Katrina and Jasmine. I didn't think they would be here, but they are here. So, if you will, I want you all to take a deep breath. I want you to exhale. And I want you to think about getting out of the box, getting out of your bubble tonight. And I want you to think about not being politically correct. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to participate a little bit, and we'll have a little sharing, because I think political correctness doesn't serve us. Everybody has their party manners on, and nobody's having any real conversations. We're all being polite in the process. We're missing the big picture, right? So I'm going to start off with a story, because I think, I think stories connect because they're real. It's not theory. I'm going to tell you all a story about an African-American couple, young African-American, newlywed couple that moved to Little Rock, Arkansas in 1994. The wife just recently graduated from med school and was doing her residency at University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. And the husband was in the fitness field. And they left Jackson, Mississippi, and moved to Little Rock, Arkansas in 1994. This is not a story about the red money that the couple experienced, but I want to talk about another incident that happened with the couple. I don't know if you all are familiar about Arkansas, but there's a little red river in Arkansas. And it's up in Heber Springs, which is about, I think an hour and a half, maybe, north of Little Rock, which is the state capital. Beautiful country, God's country. There's a river that runs there, and that river is ice cold, and some of the best trout fishing in the United States is in that little red river. So one Saturday morning, early, the couple took a road trip with the retired African-American school teacher. He was an avid trout fisher. Took the couple to the Little Red River. They went in, water was cold, had on their waders, casts, that was, they caught their limit, catch and release. And so once they finished with their fishing, they left and went to the local diner, right? It's 1995. So, as the story was told, the diner has this glass front. It's a huge glass front, so you can see everybody going and coming, right? And so, as the couple and the retired school teacher was approaching the diner was full of people sitting there, but everybody in the diner could look out through the glass and see the three individuals approaching. So, the three individuals walked in the door, and as soon as they stepped foot in the diner, on cue, every single person in the diner got up and walked out. So as the story was told, the waitress was embarrassed. The waitress's cheeks were red. And the waitress dropped her head. She came over to the table and she said, "Y'all, I am so sorry. I am so sorry." And you can tell she was embarrassed, ashamed, upset, and just really, you could tell based on the story that it affected her in such a way. And the husband told the waitress, "This just means we're going to be able to get our food quicker." And we're going to tip you very well because you're a sweetheart. And that waitress took care of those three people like they were part of her family. And it made things a lot lighter. But that was a profound experience for the couple because the couple, being from Mississippi primarily, had never experienced anything like that, even in the great state of Mississippi. And I share that story to kind of set the tone about this thing in the country, in America, that we call racism, and how real it is, and how it impacts people, and how it impacts people's ability to think logically, and to think to be human, and to be kind, and to be considerate. And I have to tell you, that couple was Katrina and I. And I hate that she experienced it, but I'm glad that she was there, because had I came home and told her that story, she probably wouldn't have believed me. And we sat there and we looked at each other and we were like, is this really happening? This really just happened. And to the waitress's defense, she was a sweetheart, and she treated us with kindness, and she served us. But it was a shock to our systems coming from Mississippi. And we have a lot of history in our home state, right? But we had never experienced anything quite like that. And here we are, newlywed, Little Rock, Arkansas, we go up to go fly trout fishing, and that happened to us, and that kind of was like, wow. I think for me, and I can't speak for Katrina, but for me, it was like, well, this is real. Up to that point, I heard about it. You hear stories, but I never had experienced anything that I was old enough to be aware of that was that blatantly divisive. So, just want to share that little story with you guys, because I think that even though 40 or 50 people walked out, there was one person that stayed in there, and she took care of us, and we had a great conversation with her. And Mr. Pleasant is his name, Carl Pleasant, who's now gone on to the next world. He's a retired music teacher from the city of Little Rock. He actually taught Chelsea Clinton how to play the violin. Quite talented and an avid fisher person. He loved to fish, and so that was our spot, the Little Red River. So anyway, so what I wanted is, I had a lot of grandiose ideas about what we would do tonight, and so I toned it down a bit, and I wanted to start with that to kind of set the tone. And there's a statement that the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i United States put out in 1991, and I just absolutely, when I read that, it blew my mind, because I was shocked that anybody was speaking truth to this disease, because it is a disease. And it's a disease in our country that we haven't addressed. And because we haven't addressed it, it is becoming more and more and more problematic. And the quote just says to ignore the problem. And that's what we've done. We've ignored the problem, and we are exposing ourselves to moral, physical, and spiritual danger. And that just kind of struck me right in the heart. So, let's see if I can get this thing to work. I did it. Thank you so much. Jason, you're a wizard. So, I often like to refer to this as so-called race, because as we know, race is not a reality, but it is a huge social construct. We have bought into something that doesn't exist, and it's often been referred to as man's most dangerous myth. What did Albert Einstein say about this? So, there's a formula that's been used throughout history, right? The formula has been the same. There needs to be justification for mistreatment, right? So before you can mistreat a people, you must first dehumanize and or reclassify. And this is done so stereotypes were created and perpetuated, so we can justify mistreating people who are different. And it's the same around the world. So we often talk about them. Who are them? Who are they? They're not us. They're different from us. They're animals. Look at the way they act. Look at the way they behave. Therefore, they should be treated this way. Okay? And we won't even start talking about self-fulfilling prophecies, but you know how that works, right? So, this didn't start out of the blue. And it surely didn't start with Carl Linnaeus. But Carl Linnaeus is the first person who did a reclassification, and it was accepted, and it was supported by notable scientists of the day. So Carl Linnaeus he was a botanist from Sweden, and he developed a system. And this is problematic because it actually begins to gain traction in the academic world and in the business world. People were so eager to embrace this, right? because then we can justify human slavery, right? We can justify our practices. Because if a scientist tells us there are differences in so-called races, then it is okay for us to continue doing what we're doing. So, Linnaeus based the 4 varieties on physical and cultural descriptions that favored Europeans. Now here, I have them listed alphabetically. So if Linnaeus listed them in order to benefit himself, what would be the order of importance? Europeans. What would come next? There you go. There you go. Europeans, Asiatics, then Americans, and then guess who's last? Right? There's a saying when you go travel the world, it's called the color code. White, you all right? Right? Yellow, cool fellow. Brown, stick around. Red, go ahead. Black, get back. And that's the way it is across the world. The hue of the skin dictates levels of importance or value. That's why you have people across the world bleaching their skins. I don't know if anybody, I should have put a picture of Sammy Sosa. Has anybody seen a before and after picture of Sammy Sosa? No. You seen it? What does it look like? Say again. Baseball player. He's Dominican, but if you look at him, you wouldn't tell because he's been bleaching his skin. Because he's bought into the madness. Right?
Could you say the colors again? What you just said?
White, all right. Yellow, cool fellow. Red, go ahead. Brown, stick around. Black, get back.
We might argue with the red go ahead. That's another thing.
Yeah, that's another thing. And I think it's probably particularly unique to our country, red. But in other countries, red is not so bad. But in the United States of America, red is, you talk about the Trail of Tears, which I think is one of the biggest terrorist acts ever committed on the soil. Just atrocity after atrocity. So you guys kind of figure out what we're talking about here. So now we're going to go, after Linnaeus created and first written his story that classified humans, in 1779, we had Johann Blumenbach. He picked up the torch, and he added a 5th group of humans. This time, it becomes even more ingrained in both the academic and business worlds. It becomes scientific justification for the mistreatment of people, solely based on skin color and the opinion of a German naturalist. Okay? So, here are his groups. You can see them up there. He's got American, and I have also alphabetized these. American, Caucasian, Ethiopian, Malay, and Mongolian races. But he added a 5th. But what made this unique is this is the first time we get to see documentation of someone actually applying attributes to the group, right? So, let's play again. Who gets assigned what category? So let's start from the top. Okay. Oh, choleric, obstinate, contented, and regulated by customs. I'll read it again. Choleric, obstinate, contented, and regulated by customs. Now we're talking about the groups. that we're choosing from are American, Caucasian, Ethiopian, Malayan, and Mongolian. Here we go. We'll help you out. We'll skip. We'll go right to the cheat sheet. I just wanted you to ponder on that for a minute. So now, again, in alphabetical order. Oh, okay. So the 5 groups are American. So the American group is, and I took off some of the adjectives because it would kind of give it away. So I removed reddish. So American says reddish, choleric, obstinate, contented, and regulated by customs. These are the attributes that Blumenbach is attaching to the different so-called races. The second group, Caucasian, white, fickle, sanguine, blue-eyed, gentle, and governed by laws. Ethiopian, black, phlegmatic, cunning, lazy, lustful, careless, and governed by caprice. Then we have Malayan, sallow, grave, dignified, avaricious, and ruled by opinions. And he got a real intellectual with the Mongolians. He said, they're just the same as the Malaysians. So, what do you all see here with these labels? What do you see? Not a trick question. We see the beginning of stereotypes. And how different is a 1779 stereotype for black folks? How might it look like what we think about black folks today? Phlegmatic, cunning, lazy, lustful, careless, and governed by caprice. So now we're starting to attach these values to people of different colors based on a person's opinion. And of course, if we put them in the order, this is the order Blumenbach put him in. And he put himself at the top, and everybody else falls off. Okay?
I have a comment.
Yes?
If you go back to the previous slide, Blumenbach was lazy because he made the Mongolians the same as the Malays.
Correct. Correct. Very, very correct. Now, the irony behind all of this is Blumenbach later in life met and fell in love with the Ethiopian. He tried all he could do to right the wrong. He wrote paper after paper after paper, argument after argument after argument, but the ship had sailed. And his ship helped to justify what was going on in the world with human slavery and human mistreatment, right? And so we're going to buy into this, we're going to follow this, because this really benefits us, okay? So this is kind of how we got to these attributes, because there was a time when this didn't exist. People were just people, and they were just existing, and there was no difference in terms of how people looked at each other. But it became law, it became legislated, it became this is what we do, this is how we do it, and people were forced into that more or less, because what are you going to do, right? So
Other than a scientist, what was his position? Because he must have had a lot of money and been very important for people to just fall into whatever he thought.
well,
Affluent, very.
he was affluent, he was educated, he was learned, he was very influential, and he was piggybacking on the work of Linnaeus. And he just added another group, and then he added attributes. And this helps. You know, there's always a saying, if you want to get the truth, just follow the money, right? This is profitable. It's benefited people. Because there were a lot of people who were against slavery. You know, a lot of people stood up against it, but, you know, this is a billion-dollar industry, and people were making money off of this, and so we had to find a way to make it okay. And so people were quick to buy in because it was an investment. Totally an investment. So, not different from some of the things that are going on today. So, very interesting. I want to move. So, if you guys want any of this information, you can, I guess you can give your email address or something to Shirley or whomever, and we can make sure you get all this, so you don't have to worry about trying to copy it. It's not mine. I give it out. So you have it. There's a book that's out now, and it's on the bestseller list, and it's a pretty good book, and it's actually an excellent book. And the book is called Waking Up White, and it's Debbie Urban. Some of you in here, I'm sure, have read it. Some of you are reading it. I would suggest that you read that book because it is a very insightful book. It is about a privileged, very, very well-hearted, loving white woman waking up and understanding what's going on and being able to realize that and to put it down in print and share it. I would highly, highly suggest you read it because she really creates a lot of space. So, this is one of her quotes from her book, which I think is very, very powerful. And now we're talking about this myth of race. She said, it turns out, stumbling block number one was I didn't think I had a race. So I never thought to look within myself for answers. The way I understood it, race was for other people. Black and brown skinned people. Don't get me wrong, if you put a census form in my hand, I would know to check white or Caucasian. It's more than I thought all those categories like Asian, African American, American Indian, and Latino were the real races. I thought white was the raceless race, just plain, normal, the one against which all others were measured. She's being honest. She's being honest. Very affluent, very well-to-do, grew up in the New England states, but just had an awakening. And the fact that she thought that it was normal, the one which all others were measured, is a form of unconscious privilege and unconscious white supremacy. And white supremacy, it sounds bad because we think about the Klan, but it just is. It's not necessarily as ugly as the Klan makes it seem unless you apply it. And so this is what she's talking about, becoming aware of her unconsciousness. That's good. Neely Foley Jr. said, if you don't understand white supremacy or racism, everything that you do understand will only confuse you. I do not. So, I'm going to read this, and I hope I don't bore you to tears, which is why I thought I had it up there because something happened. This is a quote. I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equity of the white and black races. That I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I will say, in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equity. I will add to this that I have never seen, to my knowledge, a man, woman, or child who was in favor of producing a perfect equality, social and political, between Negroes and white men. That was a speech given in Charleston, Illinois in 1858. Charleston happens to be the town I grew up in. And I remember going to his office downtown on a tour, and I had no idea that the great emancipator was also stuck in this mindset of superiority and inferiority. Abraham Lincoln. So, one of my favorite artists wrote a song called Avalanche, and I didn't get the sound going right, but you can look it up, and he actually uses Abraham Lincoln's words in his lyrics. He was not, or ever had he been in favor of setting your people free. If it wasn't for the 13th Amendment, we would have been born in slavery. He was not, nor ever had he been in favor of letting us vote. So you see, Abraham Lincoln was a racist who said you cannot escape from history. And the chorus is, like the snow coming down the mountain that landed on wounded knee, nobody wants to take away the responsibility. Francis Rogers Nelson. I thought it was interesting the way he took words from the speech and put it into the song to get to a point, not only about slavery, but also about the slaughter of Native Americans at Wounded Knee. Very powerful. So now we're talking about you must first reclassify or relabel for people before you can mistreat them. And so now we have the President of the United States saying, be clear, he was against slavery because he wanted to save the Union, but he did not believe in equity. He did not think blacks and whites were equal. So, that was 1858. That was back then. We don't have any of those issues now. We've come a long way. Was that the Virginia Slims commercial? You come a long way, ladies. You already know Virginia Slims? Talking about the cigarette industry. We won't even talk about that. But the Bell Curve was a book that was written in 1994. And it made the New York bestseller, New York Times bestseller list. Sold over 300,000 copies. And they basically reinforce the stance of Carl Linnaeus and Blumenbach in the Bell Curve. This is 1994, right? The authors wrote about racial differences in intelligence and discussed the implications of those differences. So now we're talking about 1994 bestsellers, so a lot of people are reading this, and so people are still invested in this myth of so-called race. How do we debunk all this? This is really with the Human Genome Project. Yes? So we're talking about, imagine an intense study of over 10,000 different groups of people. Not 10,000 people, 10,000 different groups of people. This was huge. It took them 12 years, I think, it took them to do it. Right? And so, they studied the genomes and the sequencing of DNA of 10,000 different groups of people. And the researchers concluded that the differences in the genome sequences of human beings was so minute that it wasn't worth mentioning. In layman terms, they concluded that all human beings are at least 50th cousins. 50th cousins. All human beings on the face of the earth are at least 50th cousins. Imagine that. Wow. I really got the wrong PowerPoint in there. We'll work through it though. Okay, so color. Science tells us that skin color is dictated primarily by the parents' genetics and what else? Exposure to the sun. Exposure to the sun. Exposure to the sun. Okay? And we can get technical, we get the ultraviolet and all this kind of thing. So, we go on to learn that the melanin and the connective tissue under the dermis dictates an individual's intelligence. No. Well, make sure you're paying attention. So the melanin and the connective tissue under the dermis, that is what controls the hue of the skin and the color of the skin. Right? I'm sorry.
Who came up with that one?
No, I was just testing you, see if you were paying attention. Well, our society has come up with that. Because that's what we say now, right? Intelligence is based on so-called race. And not. And that's what we learn to believe. Then we create IQ tests. Who creates the IQ test? Is it based on European anthropological construct? Is it based on what epistemology is it? There are lots of people who don't test well. Does that mean they're intelligent? Or sometimes people have a very good memory. Does that mean they're very intelligent? Maybe they have a very good memory. So the way we test intelligence is skewed, totally skewed. How many people know people that are very cerebral but can't pour water in a boot and pour it out? Who's more intelligent and who would you want to have next to you? So let's stop this nonsense with intelligence. So there is a direct correlation between the geographic distribution of ultraviolet radiation and the distribution of indigenous skin pigmentation around the world. Areas that receive higher amounts of ultraviolet radiation, generally located closer to the equator, tend to have darker skinned populations. Surprise, surprise. Areas that are far from the tropics and closer to the poles have lower intensity of ultraviolet radiation, which is reflected in lighter skinned populations. Quite simple and very logical, yet we are still invested in this myth of so-called race. With all this information, we're still invested in it. How about this? Try this on for size. Research has suggested that human populations over the past 50,000 years have changed from dark skin to light skin and vice versa as they migrate to different ultraviolet zones. So, what's your name, Mr. Neil. So Neil, if you move to the Congo and you stay in the Congo, and your kids stay in the Congo, in 50,000 years, your ancestors or your descendants, are going to have dark skin. If I move to Iceland and don't leave Iceland, stay there, my descendants are going to have white skin and look white. So what does that say? What does that speak to? That speaks to the human body's remarkable ability to adapt to climate. That's all it is. It's about adaptation. Geography is what determines that. So darker the skin, the more protection you have from the sun. The broader the nose, the easier to breathe the thick, damp air. So all that's just, and there's a group of people that live in the Pacific Islands. I forget which island it is. It's just fascinating, you know. They are the best divers in the world. They don't wear masks and all. They dive and they go when they hunt, and they can hold their breath for an unusual amount of time. What do you think is happening? What do you think is happening to their bodies? Their hands are starting to web. Their hands and their feet in between are starting to web, and their capacity is increasing. So when they go down, and people are like, are they ever going to come up? Because it's adaptation. Can you imagine that? I mean, look, their hands are webbing, their feet are webbing, and their lungs are being able to. And then there's another group of runners. Well, we know what the Ethiopians are doing, right? In marathons. But there's a Native American track team on a reservation. I should have my facts, but I don't. And they've been running for generations. And they run the cross country in, I forget what state it is. They regulate it because it's just an adaptation. They're running on these mountains and hills, and their body just adapts, and before you know it, they become super runners. So the human body is remarkable, extremely remarkable at adaptation. And that's a gift from the divine designer. So here we have all these very accomplished people in the field of anthropology and genetics, making statement after statement after statement about this myth we call race. So here you have John Ladd. We, the researchers, are taking action to correct a legacy of misconception about the biology of race, in which earlier generations of researchers, Linnaeus, Blumenbach, so forth, provided the raw materials for serious claims of racial superiority. They like to concoct a biological basis for mistreating people. Once again, before you can mistreat, you have to be reclassified. John Marks, a biologist at Yale University. Race has no basic biological reality. Let that sink in for a minute. It appears that a large percentage of the dominant culture has intentionally ignored science, logic, and all sense of reasoning to validate and justify the idiotic notion of white supremacy and thus white privilege. Richard Leakey. We are one species, one people. Every individual on this earth is a member of Homo sapiens sapiens. So there is only one race of humans. Homo sapiens sapiens, that's it. And the geographical variations we see among people are simply biological nuances of the basic thing. The often very deep differences between cultures should not be seen as division between people. Instead, culture should be appreciated for what they really are, the ultimate declaration of belonging to the human species. And there he is. What does Bill Nye, the science guy, have to say about this? Bill Nye, the science guy, says, researchers have proven scientifically that humans are all one people. The color of our ancestors' skin, and ultimately my skin and your skin, is a consequence of ultraviolet light, of latitude and climate. Despite our recent sad conflicts here in the U.S., there really is no such thing scientifically as race. There really is no such thing scientifically as race. We are one species. Each of us is more alike than we are different. We all came from Africa. We all made of the same stardust. We're all going to live and die on the same planet, a pale blue dot in the vastness of space. We have to work together. Shoghi Effendi is a guardian of the Baha'i faith. And now we are talking about what science says what the early scientists said, what scientists now are saying. And by the way, there were early scientists as early as the 1600s that said this is not true. Louis Buffon, the list goes on and on. But people just stuck their fingers in their ears and said, la, 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 we got money to make, get back, right? So how do we start changing this? How do we start addressing this in a healthy way? Let neither think that the solution is so vast a problem, it is a matter that exclusively concerns the other. Let neither think that such a problem can be either easily or immediately be resolved. Let neither think that anything short of genuine love, extreme patience, true humility, consummate tact, sound initiative, mature wisdom, and deliberate persistence, and prayer for effort can succeed in blotting out the stain which this patent evil has left on the fair name of their common country. Share with me the garden of the high faith. Dr. King, I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final say. Are you guys starting to see a theme here about the conditions for overcoming this disease? Dr. Cornel West, we have to recognize that there cannot be relationships unless there is commitment, unless there is loyalty, unless there is love, patience, persistence. And these guys have to get together in a room somewhere and discuss this. They're from all different parts of the world. They're saying the same thing about how we address this disease. Nelson Mandela. No one is born hating other people because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. So, we can make a huge difference in our circles of influence. We don't have to go march and boycott and picket and put ourselves at risk and put a target on our backs. The people who you most impact are the people that you know, because they know you, they respect you. Quick story, and I'm going to share it. There are 4 boys and 4 girls in my family. My older sister has since gone on. She was an accomplished attorney down in New Orleans. She went to Loyola Law School, passed the bar the first time with all that Neapolitan law records. And so she was, needless to say, very respected in our family. We were all sitting at Thanksgiving dinner once, and were you there, Katrina? You were there. Okay. I'm glad somebody here did a fact check. So, we were having a conversation, and we have nieces and nephews and cousins. I mean, there's a lot of people in the room, a lot of people. We were all doing the family thing. And I don't know what happened, but my oldest sister, Pam, she's the oldest, the lawyer. And by the way, she was a chemist before she became a lawyer. She was at DuPont, and she said, I want to go to law school. And Katrina and I didn't have any kids, so we took her boys and she went to law school. And she made a comment in front of all of my nieces and nephews and cousins. All white people are, I can't remember what she said, but it was something very negative and derogatory. Now you have to understand, this is coming from a person who's respected, and it has a lot of sway in the family. And so I'm sitting there listening to her, looking at her like, what is she saying? And nobody said anything. And I said, Pam, you know that is just not true. There are some white people who are whatever. There are some black people that are. There are some people from all. It's not the color of the skin. If a person is that way, it's because of who they are. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. And I checked her right there. Table got quiet. Nobody said anything. Subject changed. Later on that day, several of my nieces and nephews came up to me and were like, "Uncle Dennis, I'm so glad you said something because I was confused. I didn't know, because this is coming from a credible source, right?" And so I say that to say that we have responsibilities in our circles of influence to call it and to stand on it. And if you're in your circle of influence where people know you, respect you, and love you, that's where you need to be. That's where you have the most impact. So there's a lot that you can do. And I knew she knew better because we grew up, like I said, in Charleston, Illinois, and we were one of 2 black families in the town. My dad got his master's at Eastern, and there were families that took us in, not took us in, but treated us like family that looked nothing like us. Showed us a lot of love. And I said, that's something else. I said, that's not right, because you know some people that were white that treated us like family. What are you talking about? So I could say that in that space because I'm part of that group, I'm part of that family, and I interrupted that nonsense because it was misinformation, and had I not said anything, who might that have impacted to start developing those negative thoughts about somebody based on their skin color? So it's not a big thing. How else can we do it? We kept seeing love. We kept seeing unconditional love, trust, patience. All these things have to happen. And there's Nelson Mandela. How do you go to jail for that long and not have hatred? It's amazing to me. I know I'm not that big. So this is what the Baha'i Faith says about blacks and whites in America. And understand, blacks and whites in America are unique because we're one of the few countries that has the pathology of human slavery, not that far removed, right? And if we can get it right here, we would be a model for the world, and we have the capacity to do that. We have the capacity to do that. Blacks and whites must understand that no real change will come about without close association, fellowship, and friendship among diverse people. What does that look like? The reason I can interrupt my sister at Thanksgiving meal is because I had a close association with people who didn't look like me, and they treated me like family. So I can stand on that and speak on that because I had that experience. So you can't say, I got a black cat, a black car, a black couch, a black friend. You really need to have an equitable relationship. How do you determine if your relationship is equitable or not? If you haven't had somebody who doesn't look like you at your dinner table with your family, then you're missing the mark. Because that's a simple yet powerful gesture. Your home, not on the back, out the back door, not on the back stoop, not on the porch, not on the step, not grabbing a sandwich at the drive-thru, sitting at your table with your family, your loved ones, and you invite them to a meal. That is a big step about that shows that there's some trust, because that's intimate, right? Now, you just open your door for anybody? Absolutely, positively not. You have to be selective, right? But a lot of people confuse the nature of the relationship. One more quick story, and I think we're about ready for it. And I'm so glad you're here, Katrina. We were doing a workshop in Little Rock, Arkansas. And 2 women came into the workshop from Hot Springs. They were Hot Springs women. They had been friends for over 25 years, I think it was, is what they said. And there was a black lady and a white lady. And the white lady was just gushing. She came to the workshop. She was so glad that she was there. And we started talking about this concept of equitable relationships and masks. Because you do know a lot of people of color wear masks, right? Yes. So the white lady got up, and she stood up, and she talked about her friend, and she talked about how much she loved her friend. And you could see there was genuine love in her eyes and in her heart. And she said, we're the best of friends. We've been friends for over 25 years. I love her, and we don't have any secrets between us, and we don't have those issues. And I said, well, sometimes people of color wear masks around white people so that white people can feel comfortable. Oh, my friend would never do that. And we had already created a safe space to have honest and frank consultation. And the friend says, we're not as close as you think we are. And it was a pain because you could see the pain on the white lady's face because she was in it lock, stock, and barrel and felt like that's what it was. But the black lady didn't feel that same way. Now, there's a responsibility on the black lady too, to trust, to be honest, to not wear a mask. But that space hadn't been created, and they didn't have that relationship. And by the time the workshop was over, I think they were closer than they'd ever been in 25 years because they had an honest conversation. And so, in our faith, there are two things that have to happen between, in addition to this, between blacks and whites, real specifically. And that's one thing about the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha don't mince their words. They said, white people have to relinquish their false inherent sense of superiority. And black people have to learn to trust. So it's a two-way street. How do we get to that? Right here. Okay? So, true fellowship, equitable association, trust, and relinquishing of your false inherent sense of superiority. Is it going to be uncomfortable? You betcha. But anything worth having is worth working for. And when it's changed, ever comfortable. Thank you.
Questions?
And please, when you're asking questions, don't dress it up. Don't try to be politically correct. Just say what you mean what you say, and let's see how we do.
Okay, what we're talking about is trying to change the world, right? Trying to make it a better place. And yet people tell me over and over, the only person you can change is yourself. But that goes against any of the principles of teaching. When you're a teacher, you're trying to change hearts, you're trying to change knowledge, you're trying to advance the civilization. And what we're talking about here is changing people's hearts. And I don't know if I have a question or if I'm just making a statement, but I think that this idea of the only person you can change is yourself is not right. That maybe by, okay, you take that.
No, I think changing oneself is a pretty big task. It's a pretty big task. And it's in the way you walk. It's in the way you talk. It's in the way you acknowledge people. And it's the way you see the nobility in everyone. There's a certain way you look at a person, and the person knows that you see them. Because you see their full humanity. And that breaks walls down right away. And people are keenly aware if you see them or not. So I think there's no absolutes. But I believe once we change ourselves to walk a certain way, then we become a magnet. And we attract a lot of different people because people say, okay, that person sees me that person acknowledges me. And sometimes we have to learn how to listen and not talk too much. And I didn't even go over, there's some distancing behaviors, which I think is really neat that may help you guys. But I have a ton of stuff. I didn't want to overload you or bombard you. But there are some distancing behaviors that some white people unconsciously engage in that keeps people of color from connecting. And, well, there's a lot of them, and that might take a little while, but one of them, I'll tell you a couple of them. One of them is, I'm the okay white person in the group. Right? And when you think you're the okay white person, then there's no impetus for you to change or for you to shift because I'm okay. Another one is, there's a lot of other problems besides racism. Why don't we deal with those? So there's a lot of different things that happen, and it's unconscious, it's not even conscious. It's an unconscious need, and it's a way to protect ourselves. It's just natural.
Would you like to comment? Is I really appreciate the point of view that you've given, which is kind of, in terms of our makeup, we are all one people, and that's wonderful. And you've made a true case for that. However, in terms of racism, I guess the point I would make is that in the society we live in, which is pretty much a racist society, for me, I would like to think that I'm not racist, but I think I must be. I can almost hardly not be in the way we're bombarded with racist points of view, and I just wonder if you would comment on that.
Well, I think all of us, no matter what we look like, have bias. Just pick your poison, right? Some people it's skin color, some people it's sexual orientation, some people it's religion, some people it's gender, some people it's class. You know, there's a lot of different. And if you say I'm not this, then okay, well, we'll find your poison. We just have to look for it, right? So, I think it is important to be aware of that, because saying in the United States of America that we aren't impacted by this white supremacist, racist culture is like saying we're going to get in water and not get wet. So, black folks too. So, and what happens with black folks is it becomes internalized oppression, right? So when you tell somebody over and over and over that they're less than, then eventually people believe that and then buy into that. Why do you think in New Orleans, Louisiana, sometimes the murder rate in New Orleans, Louisiana was higher than any of the war zones across the country? And who's killing who? Black males are killing black males. Why aren't black males killing white males? Because black males don't hate white males. Black males hate themselves, not all. But that's where that comes from. So you've told me I'm nothing, I'm nobody. Over a period of time, that starts to sink in. That becomes a belief. And I live down to that. And so if you step on my sneaker, I'm going to kill you because I'm nobody and you're nobody. And guess what the legal system says? You're absolutely right. Because you will get more time for drugs than you will for murdering a black boy. And so we're talking about internalized oppression and how it not only impacts, or racism, how it not only impacts white people, how it impacts black people, how black people see themselves. So I think to say that we aren't impacted by this is a bit denial, big denial. Because we can all be nice and have our party manners on off and say that there are some serums that can ferret out whether or not you have an issue, right? And I think one of them is alcohol, another one is anger, another is stress, and sometimes joking. And if you think you don't have an issue with a person from a particular segment of the population, let them get in front of you on your way to work and you're late. You may not say it, but think about what comes to your mind, right? There was a guy, case in point, named Nat Rutskin, who was a devout servant in the civil rights struggle. He was a Baha'i, and he coined racism as an emotional commitment to ignorance. He fought it tooth and nail. I mean, every facet of his life. He wrote books. Books are quite fast. I read them. They're great books. He shared this with me before he passed. I had the pleasure of actually talking to him. And he said he was on his way to work one day. He was late. He was rushing. And just as he got to his exit, there was an old African American in a pickup truck going less than half the speed limit. And he said, the words, "move, nigger," came into his mind. He didn't say it. The words, "move, nigger," came into his mind, and he said it almost destroyed him. Because of all the work he's done, and he's put on the line, he didn't think that that was in him. And that instant helped him to see just how deep this disease is. And he wrote books about it because then he recommitted himself to this unconscious conditioning and tried to ferret out his body. But thank you for asking that question. Very well, very good question. Thank you.
Hi, Dennis.
Hey.
Just a couple of reflections of what you said. First of all, I very much appreciate what you said about the need to have relationships and have people over your home. I think it's true and something I haven't done enough in my life. If I've done it once or twice, someone from a different race, different tradition at home. So that's a beautiful idea. I think starting with ourselves and our own immediate circle is something I wholeheartedly support. Just a couple other quick reflections. I'm a rabbi. This is Holocaust Remembrance Day, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. So I got to tell you, when you talked about the racist theories and so forth, to understand that attempt to cloak prejudice in a biological term or scientific way certainly affected the Jewish people, because in Nazi Germany, what was a long-standing anti-Semitism for generations and generations, got an imprimatur of science, and then Jews who were white were also classified as, not only subhuman, but also as the enemy.
Correct.
And there were all these various tests that were done by various people in the Nazi regime, in school classes and so forth, to segregate, as you said, and reclassify. So I think the one, just to bring that into the discussion, because that resonated with me when you think about racism. Jews were then classified as a race and seen as the ultimate enemy that needed to be not only put down, but to be murdered or annihilated. I don't like to use the term exterminator, by the way, because that's what you do to insects. That was a Nazi term. But sadly, we have, in our general culture, have incorporated those Nazi terms, because it was made to dehumanize. So whites can, using this classification of race, and that I'm white, I realize I gain from white privilege, but I don't see myself as a white person. So I think for people of different skin colors, it's important to realize that there are white people, I'm sure not the only one, who don't really see themselves, don't identify as white people per se, and have had a long history of prejudice by various people, but certainly the Aryan version of that. Sadly, there was a Christian version and a pagan version that my people have suffered from, and we have within ourselves prejudiced people, of course, as well. So I think it's important. My wife is a social work professor, and she, on diversity, does an opening lecture that says, I want you to know that I don't feel part of it. Why do you think I don't feel part of the white majority? And most of the students don't understand it. She explains as a Jew, she doesn't feel part of the majority often. and feels like we carry our own baggage. So it's important to understand people's story and not judging them by their skin color and just say there's white and black and red and yellow. Within the white community, there are people who don't feel part of that privileged class as well. And finally, I just want to share a quick midrash or story that from Jewish tradition. And it's basically saying, it's a midrash, a story that tells the greatness of God. And it said, here's an example of the greatness of God. When human beings create a coin, they have a mold, and they pour in molten metal, and every coin is the same. But God is greater than that. God created every human being from one coin, and therefore, in some ways, they're exactly alike. But every coin, they say, is the greatness of God, is every human being is different. The same created the image of God, but uniquely special and different. And I think that combination, I find that wisdom from my tradition very effective, because it talks about difference, but it talks about being different and being the same. I think that's a seemingly a paradox, but it really says the two go together. So I just wanted to share that.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's important. It's important that whenever we're talking about whatever it is we're talking about, it's not a contest of who bleeds deeper, who gets cut deeper. It is not the issue at all. What we're talking about is, in the United States of America, this is the greatest challenge. And the people who are suffering the most are the people with dark skin, because these are the people who are dying and suffering more so in this country, because the luxury you have that I don't have is you can walk out that door and you won't be judged by the color of your skin.
I'll be judged though by
If you put that on, you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged, no question about it. And I think that when we talk about in the United States of America, because of the pathology of human slavery, we're not saying these other issues, and ism, it doesn't matter what the ism is, or what the group is, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. But if we were to get this right in this country between blacks and whites, everything would fall into place, because that is a hurdle that seems to be extremely difficult to overcome. It is our writing talk about it as a long and thorny road, because it's so deeply entrenched into the American fiber and the American culture. And the Holocaust is a horrific example of this declassification, and in order to mistreat. And you can't fight for any one group and not have compassion for all groups. It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So I tell you, thank you for sharing this.
Thank you for this evening and for your insights and the books and statements and yeah. I like to think that I can change myself, that I can behave humanely to everybody I meet. My grave concern for the United States, and perhaps the parts of the rest of the world as well, has to do with how our sense of white privilege, European privilege, has been built into our laws, our economy, our education, our religion. And what we've been listening to and thinking about and working with tonight is clearly a beginning. To talk about, or to, the place that I get really breathless, has to do with the structure of our society and all the things that we, consciously or not, are doing to try and maintain that.
Yes, these institutions, these organizations, are all made up of individuals, right? Individuals adapt very quickly. They see the lay of the land, and whether you actively engage or passively engage in privilege, it's real. People do it because it's quite convenient. But I believe in my heart of hearts that most human beings are good people. I believe that, or I wouldn't do the work that I do. I believe that. I think we are highly dysfunctional. Highly dysfunctional. But I think most people are good people. And I don't think the vast majority of the population, particularly in the United States of America, gets up in the morning while they're brushing their teeth and doing their hair and putting on their makeup or whatever and say, I am going to deliberately mistreat this group of people. It doesn't happen that way, but it happens unwittingly. So part of the work is being aware of your unconscious conditioning and truly committing to ferret that out inside of us, individuals, to know that, and I don't think it's good for anybody to say, hi, my name is Dennis, and I'm a racist. I don't think that does any good. I think what we have to identify is what issues or what challenges do we have with different groups. Why is that there? Where did it come from? How do I rewrite that? Or how do I act in a manner that interrupts my ability to mistreat somebody from that group? What do I do, right? And that is a commitment to first acknowledge. First you have to acknowledge it, then you have to become aware, then you have to develop the tools and the skill sets to interrupt it. Because lots of those messages we got from reliable sources. They came from our parents, our grandparents, and they were given to us at the same time they gave us a bunch of love. And so it's mixed up into that, right? And we don't have to beat them up about it and make them wrong about it, but we have to go, well, Mama gave me that love, but she also gave me something that wasn't right, that I need to say, I'm not going to pass that on, and I'm going to make a conscious effort to ferret that out of the way I do business or the way I interact with people from whatever that group is. Does that make any sense? So I think it is a commitment to work on changing oneself and to be consistent and to get out of your box, get out of your comfort zone, because any change that happens is only done one person at a time. And we have to believe in the collective consciousness of the human spirit, which I think is largely good. Now, there is a segment of the population that gets up in the morning and says, I am going to deliberately mistreat somebody that is a female, or that is Jewish, or that is Muslim, or that is black, or that has a different sexual orientation than myself. But I think those people are largely in the minority. But I think what happens is we don't interrupt that in our circles. Because if someone in our circle is doing that, we have the power to step up and say, if you have the love and you have the respect, you don't need to do it to strangers. That's dangerous. But we can do it to the people we know that love us and respect us.
We're going to have to keep our questions short and our answers short.
Oh, okay. Sorry, brother.
Sir.
I am a fan of the Washington Redskins football team from Washington. That's not easy. But anyway, there's been a controversy in the last several years about the name. And some people say it's discriminatory. And so one day I was at a book lecture, a woman who had written a very good book about the Indian culture that existed in our country before the white man, or whatever we call ourselves, came. And it was extensive. They had quite a civilization going. And so anyway, at the end of her lecture, I asked her about our little controversy, and she wasn't aware of it. And I said, you know, we call the team the Redskins. She said, I'll tell you what a Redskin is. Jackson, President Jackson was a real Indian hater, and then only the good Indian was a dead Indian, and they would kill them and skin them. Their skins were brown, but when they skinned them, they were redskins. That's what a redskin is. So, yeah. I think we need to change it.
Sir, you have a question?
Yeah. My comment or my thought came after hearing the rabbi's comments. And I was thinking back to the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter, and how quickly there was an attempt to be inclusive and said all lives matter, diminishing the focus on Black Lives Matter and making it homogenous with a generality that got so great and actually then caused a lot of schisms itself. And I think one of the problems that we have is we are all representatives of varieties of groups, some of which are oppressed for one reason or another. There's the disabled community, broadly speaking, and a lot within the disabled community. There's the LGBTQ community, and broader than that, there are religions who are discriminated against. And it's too easy for us collectively, I think, to want to bring our burden into the discussion because we see similarities. And I think one of the things that we have to focus on is the Black Lives Matter, or the racism between black and white, as a principal and long-standing source, not ignoring the broader set of issues, but we can't contaminate the discussion and the focus by trying to make it so inclusive that we miss the point.
Very well put, and I think that's the distancing behavior we talked about that spoke to what about all the other problems? Why don't we focus on this and that and the other? And real quickly, the Redskin, where's the gentleman? I worked for the YMCA of the USA, and back in the mid-90s, we had this big controversy about you guys remember the Indian Princess program at the YMCA? That was a big flashpoint, and I was the national diversity consultant when that came out. And I'm, without going into a lot of verbiage about anything like that, to me it's real simple. If something is offensive to someone, and it is not necessary for anybody's survival, why would we continue?
Sir, she was before you. She was standing there first.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, my name's Beverly, and I was a social worker 300 years ago. I'm retired now. But anyways, I'm going to tell you a quick little story. In 1975, I was a social worker at Sacred Heart Catholic Hospital in Pensacola, Florida. And my job was when somebody had a premature baby, I went out with a public health nurse. We kind of made an assessment to make sure this family had all that they needed. So we're driving out there, and of course, one day my co-worker, her name is Barbara, and she couldn't go with me. But they wanted us all to go like in pairs. So I was white, Barbara's black. So Barbara called in sick, so it's just me. So I thought, well, I'll go, and they gave me a map, and I went to Fulton, Alabama. Well, there's not much in Fulton, Alabama, except Jefferson Davis Community College. And on one side of the tracks, you know, there's white people, and on the other side of the tracks, there's black people. So I could not find the street where this young woman lived with her baby. So I'm like, oh, crying out loud. So I go to the city hall, which houses the police department, the fire department. We've all been to those towns. So I said, you know, where is this place? And they said, who are you going to visit? I said, oh, I can't tell you that because it's private. I just have to find out where the street is. So she reluctantly gave me the information, and I go there, and I'm driving, you know, where I'm supposed to be driving. I get out of my car, and I go in, and I make this assessment, and I don't know why the heck anybody sent me there, because this young woman was a scholarship basketball player at a university in Alabama. And so she had a lot of people around her, and I mean a lot of people. So I didn't have to worry about her. So I get back in the car, and around the corner is a police car. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, should I run a stop sign? And oh my. The guy gets out, he's a sheriff, like, for me, he was, you know, like 10 feet 12. And I just looked, and he said, you know, you're in the black section. I said, well, I had to go visit a family. Who are they? I can't tell you that. He goes, I'll be escorting you out of here now. And I thought that was so strange, and I was so mad, but I couldn't say anything because I was afraid I was going to get shot. You know, because I grew up in Detroit, and I crossed 8 Mile. Okay, if anybody knows about Detroit, I crossed 8 Mile, okay? But 45 years later, today, I get a email from my United States representative about who is worthy to receive a scholarship to play sports as a woman. Because they don't want to give it to transgenders. And I was mad. So that representative, if you live in Steuben's district, he's the one that sent it. He's the one that sent it. And I was very, very angry. I haven't answered yet. I got to cool down from that. But there's a great story if you may or may not know it. It's a story about a lady named Harriet. Oh, I'm done then. You can catch me later about Harriet.
All right, we're not a tag team. I'm a social worker and I'm from Detroit too. Yeah, but I was there. I was born and raised in the last 45 years. Lived in the city of Detroit. And where I want to go to is where you talked about breaking bread together with people who are different than you, different in many, many different ways. There were a lot of heads nodding when you said that, and a lot of, oh my gosh, how do I do that? You know, how do I, if I don't know? What happened in Detroit after 1967, at one hand, people say riot, at the other hand, they say rebellion, okay? And therein lies, you know, a lot of how you perceive it, okay? I say rebellion. And out of that grew an organization called New Detroit to tackle racism in Detroit. And it's ongoing. But one of the things that came upon about 15 years ago was this idea of breaking bread together. And they took the leadership of trading a little bit of his, you know, how do you do that? How do you reach? But then getting people who are willing. I mean, I don't know. I just moved from Detroit. I would love to have dinner with people who I don't know. People who are different than me, but I don't know. So are there pastors, are there organizations who can take this on a little bit and train and facilitate and get people together who want to have dinner with each other but don't really know how to do it right? So I think that's a challenge. I guess I'd like to.
I think you just got yourself a job.
Yeah, I'd love to. I don't know anyone here, but I think that's a place where institutions.
We're going to have to stop.
Okay.
I'll go real quick. Very quick, I don't have long stories. First Presbyterian in Sarasota has 4 interracial book clubs. You could start one here. What we have learned tonight is what we've been studying for the last 2 years. There are many good books where the education can help, and our interracial book clubs are made of 50% black, 50% white, and we've learned a tremendous amount, and I think it could happen here.
On that note, I just want to say one thing, if you guys leave with only one concept to take that I think will create opportunities for deep conversations and contextual shifts within yourself. Change your language about race in the plural form as it pertains to human beings. There's only one race. Homo sapiens sapiens. And when we say interracial, it implies that there are different races. That's the language, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a common vernacular. But when you get people to start thinking that there's only one race, the human race, Homo sapiens sapiens, it is a huge social construct in the United States of America. We do check boxes for a lot of different reasons, but to start carrying that and you start internalizing that. Once you start internalizing that, then you'll have a shift because you start believing that it becomes part of who you are. Language is very powerful.
I'm Shirley Bascom, and I'm the president of this group, and it's been bothering me that Pastor Hall thanked me. Would all of the members of the Venice Interfaith Board of Directors please stand? Please. These people work incredibly hard, and I love them all.
By the number of people that were willing to sit here, how important this is and how passionate you all are. We are having another session on Monday, and if you look, we're delving into specific subject areas: environment, education, the judicial system. Hopefully we're going to get some more ideas of what to do. At least we'll have more information. But I think we heard enough things tonight that if we just do step out in our own circle, maybe you don't have somebody that you want to invite to dinner, but you can bring them here next week, and they may then go home with something else that's there. So I would encourage you, invite your friends, invite your neighbors, drag them along. We can be persistent in making a change, because these are our friends, these are our neighbors, these are the people we love, and we want them to be with us. So I would encourage you to do that and make a difference. You have an opportunity to do so, and we thank you so very much, and we really thank you. Thank you so very much.